This is OTB Sports Radio.
Yes. It's Friday morning. It's just gone 7:30. Delighted you could join us on OTB AM, the sports breakfast show from Off the Ball. Owen Shane, good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian. How are you?
I'm all good. Gloomy morning in Dublin. This time last week, I was trying to avoid the sun splashing in my window, but it's a little bit more gloomy today, which is perhaps a bit of a sort of mood of the nation as well this morning after some pretty grim news yesterday on the coronavirus front. We'll have plenty more of that to come over the duration of the show. Big movement last night at 8 o'clock. It only actually struck me late in the day that this was a thing that was happening, because I'm trying to check out of the news as much as I possibly can, obviously, with all its grimness. But what a beautiful moment last night at 8 o'clock where I was going to say the nation, but certainly large parts of the nation came out to applaud those who were effectively putting their lives on the line for our safety. And the clap for carers was a huge success where I was. Owen, what was going on where you were?
Yeah, I don't think everybody in my certain area knew what was going on, to be honest. But there were certainly a few people who were out the front. I think it actually became more of a thing afterwards. I don't think I'm incorrect in saying that. Like, people saw the videos and it was like, right, okay, that's what was going on. Like yourself, I'd seen it late in the day myself and had expected it to happen. So, a few of us were outside marking it, and like it's amazing, really. Like we've had a lot of conversations this week in terms of how this week is going to change, or how these next couple of weeks and these next few months is going to change how we behave and how we think in Ireland. And one of those things, I'd imagine, will be just a greater appreciation for all our healthcare workers. They're absolutely at the front lines. Everything we are doing on a day-to-day basis in terms of social distancing and isolation is for them. It is to lessen the load on them, and is to save lives for them and the finite resources that they have. And you just hope that they can get everything they possibly can get within reason to be able to do as good a job as they could possibly do over these next few months, because it is an uphill task. And seeing the news yesterday, the most tragic day yet of COVID-19 in Ireland, it really crystallises, I think, the importance of the healthcare workers.
Yeah, it's like we're applauding their efforts at saving our lives, essentially, is what's happening here. Like, there's probably a little bit of selfishness, to be honest, rooted in it somewhere. But listen, however it comes about, hopefully it's something that's resonated with them. I'd made the point on Twitter last night that at the minute, with everything that's going on, I'm at the brink of things. I'm not that far from being at the brink of things generally, but last night nearly pushed me over the edge when we were putting the two kids to bed, and you're kind of not in any Michael Jackson way, but leaning out the window a little bit to make sure that the applause is heard loud and clear, and you can see the neighbours all around. And there's a real solidarity. There's never been anything like this before. I mean, in some ways, obviously, certainly in terms of the tragic aspect to it, you really hope that we never have to see it again. But there's that thing that's bonding communities and society and people and connecting people. I've never seen anything like it before. It's remarkable.
No, I think most people have either been at the brink or well beyond the brink at this point, and that is still while having an appreciation, and I think I speak for the vast majority here, still having the appreciation that we are all extremely lucky to, speaking just for myself, not having any family members who've been affected so far. You always kind of think to yourself, touch wood, and a lot of people, I think, who were applauding last night were in that situation, that they haven't exactly been directly affected by this just yet, but yet you are on the brink of emotion, constantly thinking about those who unfortunately are going through this, and the tragedy that struck 10 families yesterday, for example, and is going to strike many more families over the next couple of weeks. It's everybody, I think, is a ball of emotion at this point. And I guess actually sharing in that in your community, no matter what you're in, like you saw some of the videos last night of people maintaining social distancing but still out in front of their houses applauding amongst their neighbours, for example, and just kind of looking around thinking, right, okay, it's not just me, because I'd imagine it can get lonely for a lot of people, this period of self-isolation for some and social distancing for others.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I mean, we obviously have a new date now in the last couple of days as well in terms of the next target. And you'd probably expect something after that, at the very minimum, at least one more update after that to kick us probably into the middle of May or thereabouts, and we'll see where we're at from that. It has been, because we've been all looking at for the last probably 2 weeks or thereabouts, maybe a little bit longer, those videos from Spain and from Italy, the singing, the instrument playing, the sense of community that existed there. I did wonder if this is going to become a nightly thing now, and you know, there's tradition in this country around the island of obviously banging the dustbin lids off the ground and that kind of thing. I wonder if I wonder if this is going to take on a life of its own now in terms of this is going to be a nightly thing where we all rally in support of the healthcare workers, or if it's just a one-off hit where we're all like, yeah, that's it, job done now. Best of luck. It feels like there might be an opportunity for us to get onto this every day.
Completely. It's interesting when you talk about what we've been seeing in Spain and in Italy. It's a situation where we're like, oh, that's the Spanish and Italian people obviously wearing their heart on their sleeves quite a lot, getting out and singing from their balconies, whereas we would obviously be a nation that wouldn't necessarily do the same thing. We don't talk about our emotions quite a lot. We don't like when you talk about being on the brink there, I don't think too many Irish people before would ever have admitted being on the brink in any sort of situation before, whereas now it's a situation where people in their WhatsApp groups are texting their mates saying, Jesus, yeah, having a tough day today. And what comes from that then is a greater outpouring of emotion when you have something like this, a greater buy-in when you have something very simple organized like this. You wonder if it's going to be something that lasts into the long term beyond this, because it's probably a society more in tune with their emotions, perhaps, that you then have afterwards. Like, definitely, I think that if this is something that we see on a regular basis every night, it's the least anyone can do just to show a little mark of appreciation. It doesn't take a whole lot of time out of your schedule. It might make the life of one healthcare worker, or might make their day a little bit better by seeing this footage, and I think that's probably worth it.
Yeah, we'll see. I was on the news round during the week, and we were talking about this sort of thing about, what happens when all this, fingers crossed, and we're all still here, when all this passes over in terms of the psyche of the country. Like, there will be a point, and in a lot of ways, hopefully it's soon, where we all sort of wander back into where we were before all this bubbled up, that like almost that's the best result, that you're not sort of waking up every morning going, Jesus, thank God it's another day down, or whatever the case might be, that actually there is a... Have you seen The Matrix?
Yes.
You know the steak stuff where the guy goes, he gets an option at some point. You can sort of sign up to be in the Matrix and understand on some level that none of it is that real, or you can go back and take the gamble of living in real life. And the guy was like using the steak thing to entice me. He was like, look, taste the steak. Like, it's not real, but taste the steak. It's amazing. There is that element of sort of, once this is all done, that you go back to that land where you're just happily perusing through your life, and you're not having to have existential thoughts at every hand's turn. There's a real comfort in that idea, I have to say, at the minute.
Yeah, definitely. I think perusing through your life and not having to think existentially is actually a real luxury that a lot of us have had for the vast majority of our lives, thankfully. It's why certain things are important. It's why sometimes, say, if we're talking about sport, for example, over the last couple of weeks, it can sometimes feel a little bit challenging given the bigger picture of what's going on in Ireland. It goes for a lot of other things. Basically, anything that's not to do with COVID-19 at the moment almost seems a little bit trivial. But then you kind of forget how important those trivial moments were, and those trivial things were, when you were perusing through the kind of unchallenging aspects of life before this. And then you're actually like, these sort of things might be more important than ever, because perhaps for 10 minutes a day, you might be able to, the great verb, you might actually be able to peruse through these things in a fairly blasé way, I think. And being blasé about things, even for 10 minutes a day right now, is not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, give me some of that on. Give me some of that. Right. Normally we do some sort of a what's on up to for the weekend. I mean, I don't even know if there's a value in asking you that anymore. What's on the menu for the weekend?
Good question. So last weekend managed a good socially distanced walk, and a couple of them last week. Have found a few spots that have been certainly quiet and stuff that you can get out and about. The same thing will probably be engaged in this weekend, and I'm bringing my quiz writing talents to my friend's WhatsApp group tonight as well. I'll probably do some sort of quiz, because like I'm that arrogant guy who's like, yeah, I will write the quiz. I always kind of think that the people who've been writing the quizzes over the last couple of weeks on Zoom or on Skype or wherever people have been doing it, I'm like, it takes a fair bit of confidence to do that. So I've actually bit the bullet and said, listen, I'm going to take I'm a professional quiz writer, let's not forget, and I'll be taking them into our WhatsApp group at some point.
Right. Well, listen, good luck with that, and best of luck to your mates as well, because we've been all on the end of one of your crappy quizzes, and sometimes they don't necessarily make all that much sense. But listen, it'll be enjoyable if nothing else. We can, you can get in touch with us over the course of the morning as well. With you until 9:30. Lots of great stuff coming. 087 9180 180 if you want to drop us a WhatsApp at some point over the course of the morning. Let us know. Last Friday we had loads of contact from various points around the globe of people saying good morning. And well wishes as well. So do please get in contact with us this morning, whatever it is you're up to this morning, or whatever it is you're at. We really would love to hear from you. So do keep in contact with us over the course of the day, of course, on all the usual social channels as well. A little bit of an update on what's been happening in the world of sport while you were sleeping. The Irish gymnast Rhys McClenaghan has been dealing with the news that his Olympic dream will have to wait. The Tokyo Games were postponed this week until 2021 due to the ongoing pandemic. McClenaghan, who's won the World Championship bronze, of course, and European gold on the pommel horse, says that it's a case of adapting now. You can check out that full piece with his conversation with Nathan from the show last night. It's up on offtheball.com. In boxing, the Irish High Performance Director Bernard Dunn says that he'd like to have the Irish team tested for coronavirus. This is a story that's doing the rounds today. Obviously, Ireland had sent a team of 13 fighters to the European Olympic qualifiers in London a couple of weeks back for to be suspended after 3 days. You'd have heard from Kelly Harrington on the show a bit earlier in the week and her thoughts about all of that. 3 boxers and 3 coaches have since tested positive for the virus, not in the Irish camp, in the Croatian and Turkish federations. So it's in that context that Bernard Dunn says that while none of his team have been showing symptoms, either the fighters or the backroom staff, he would like to have them tested just to be on the safe side. And FIFA are to draft emergency regulations to keep players at their current clubs when their contracts expire on the 30th of June. This is one of the intriguing complications of everything that's going on at the minute. What exactly, across all sports, happens to these players once their contract expires and they're due to either leave that club and head off into retirement, or I suppose in a more complicated fashion, they're due to join another club. So what's going to happen exactly there? FIFA weighing into that. David Silva at Man City, Chelsea's Pedro, Giroud and Willian, Adam Lallana at Liverpool, another one, all amongst those who've been out of contract, and football obviously suspended with the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. So what happens at the back of that, we'll see FIFA weighing in to try and help that. Right, it's a 7:42 on this Friday morning. Here's a bit of a flavour of what's coming up over the course of this morning for you. And as I said, hope you're well, wherever it is you're at this morning. We are going to tell you what's happening in the back pages in just a couple of moments' time. Some interesting stories on the sports pages today. We're going to have the lockdown lowdown, where Owen, myself and Tommy have been digging around from the various stories around the interweb over the course of the last 24 hours. And we're going to see exactly the best of those and bring those your way in just a couple of moments' time. We're going to be joined on the line by Keith Andrews, who's getting behind the Feed the Heroes campaign, which again very much speaks to the health and well-being and the welfare of our healthcare frontline staff. And Keith's been getting involved in that. You'd have seen the Seamus Coleman video during the week. Keith was the one who instigated that, so we'll get his thoughts on that and find out exactly how he's coping, and definitely put some of those football talking points to him as well. Well, Healy is the Dublin footballer and is very much at the front line as an ICU doctor, very much at the front line of this pandemic at the minute, as the wave we're told about is going to hit us at some point very soon. And Noel is very much at the front line of that. A 4-time All-Ireland winner, multiple All-Star as well, and former Player of the Year too. So be interested to get Noel's thoughts about how this is all playing out on a very practical level as well. So that's coming your way a little bit later on. Eric Donovan is off the couch today. I don't know if you've been following this series during the week, but Andy Dunn, Robbie Cannon and several others have been putting you through your paces with lovely short 3-4 minute videos where you get the opportunity to get up off the couch and put yourself through a few reps. Well, taking that today is going to be the Kildare boxer Eric Donovan, so he'll be in conversation with us a little bit later on. Brand new feature coming your way. We gave you the little teaser for it on this morning's OTB AM. It's a kids takeover where the kids get to ask the questions. So that's going to be a really cool piece that we're going to have for you, and particularly today because Brian O'Driscoll is the one that's in the hot seat and he's been put through his paces by a bunch of kids with some fairly interesting questions. That's coming away a little bit later on. And then we're going to round things off. Owen mentioned his quiz prowess there a little bit earlier on, certainly in terms of writing the questions. I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen with this crappy quiz today, because it's going to be myself, Tommy and Ger fighting it off for the latest title of Crappy Quiz Champion. Just who's it going to be? I mean, I'll be up against two hive minds, it has to be said, that really pride themselves on their sporting knowledge. So we'll see exactly who can come out on top. That's the crappy quiz coming your way just after 9 o'clock. But right now it is time for the papers.
OTB AM.
Yeah, it is 7:45 on this Friday morning. You're watching OTB AM, the sports breakfast show from Off the Ball. Do get in contact with us. We want to hear from you. Let you know what's happening in the papers in just a second. But up at offtheball.com to begin with, really interesting read and watch from John Giles, who was on with Nathan last night. He selected his greatest ever Liverpool 11. So you're sort of straight away wondering exactly which players from the current crop have made the grade. And there's only two of them, Virgil van Dijk and Andy Robertson. Given the quality, obviously, that club have had down the years, I suppose even that's a good reflection of where they're at. But no Salah, no Mane. I suppose you've got the likes of Dalglish, Rush, et al. In the mix there. Maybe no great surprise in that, but you can go up and check out that full team up on offtheball.com as well. And also the story of the top four Bundesliga clubs who've decided to share some of the wealth with the less well-offs. They're sharing a whole pile of money with the two divisions below them, try and help the second and third tiers of German football afloat over the coming months. So really nice move there from the top clubs in the Bundesliga. That's offtheball.com. Let's have a look at what's happening in the Irish Independent for you this morning. Lovely photo, as you'll see there, of the late, great John O'Leary. He passed away yesterday. Still a very young man when he passed. He had bridged. It was a name that would have been very familiar, I would think, to a lot of sports fans, not just golf fans. But yeah, it was lovely photograph, as you can see there, of John holding aloft the trophy from his Irish Open win at Portmarnock in 1982. Bridge a long gap of home Irish Open winners. You can see him there in 1982. It was 7 years after the previous winner, Christy O'Connor, and 32 years, of course, before the next one in Padraig Harrington in 2007. But I don't know how familiar you are with this one, but there was a great story in 82 at Portmarnock. He had bogeyed the 17th on the final day. I watched a little bit of the highlights this morning. He had a two-shot lead at that point. It was down to one off the back of that. And funnily enough, he had bogeyed the 18th at the same club 4 years earlier to lose the tournament when he had been tied for the lead at that point. And he ended up in a tie for second, but none other than Seve Ballesteros. So quite a career he had. And that tournament actually won by Ken on the course, by Ken Brown, right, as it would have it. And he had an incredible, I was watching the putt that he had on the 18th in 1982. He had a brilliant approach shot, which left him about 30, 40 feet for birdie. His opponent, his playing partner that day, was also his opponent to win the tournament. Also had a great shot in and just came up short for his own birdie, which obviously would put the pressure on big time. So he had to effectively lag it up to a couple of inches to just lag it up and then knock it in for a par, which he did brilliantly. And obviously the scenes that you would see at the end, but just the storylines around it. The only thing I'd ever known about John O'Leary was 1982 Irish Open. Nobody's won it since, and that was sort of it. But actually, there is a longer piece in discussing everything that unfolded in 1982, and it's, I'm sure, it's something that will happen over the coming days.
Definitely. It's pretty much in all the newspapers this morning. The Irish Examiner, as you can see at the top of their sports front page, Golf United in respect for Jono, and using the lockdown to get off the hamster wheel, writes Ronan O'Gara, the main piece in the Irish Examiner sports section today about how he's utilising the lockdown. Not too dissimilar to the piece he did with yourself last week, Adrian, on Off the Ball. And the primary issue is getting not just rugby, but society back on track, writes Simon Lewis as well. Meanwhile, Jones agreed to 25% pay cut immediately, says RFU chief. So this is a story that was doing the rounds yesterday, that they would request Eddie Jones takes a pay cut given the reduced finances as a result of COVID-19. And it seems that he has agreed to do so immediately.
Yeah, just a couple of other stories in the Indo before I bring you the Irish Times. From the Independent, Dan McDonald writing about how the Republic of Ireland might be without several players for the rescheduled Euro 2020 playoff in June, if it does go ahead, obviously, at that time. A FIFA meeting today to discuss several things, including the rule which obliges clubs to release players, and the view that they might relax that for June and July as they've done for March and April, at which point players wouldn't have to travel. I wonder what exactly happens in that instance. Can the player force it? Is he obliged to stay at the club? We'll see how that plays out. And Frank Roach as well, also in the Irish Independent, writing about Roscommon querying whether their championship game against London, which was fixed for May the 2nd, has been cancelled, which Fergal McGill, who's the fixtures chief at Croke Park, had said yesterday, or actually just postponed. So they're the stories from the Irish Independent. The Irish Times, World Rugby making plan to save the unions from financial collapse, writes Gavin Comiskey here. 180 million profit, a staggering number, which I wasn't aware of. that had been accrued from Rugby World Cup in Japan would be used there. Comiskey says that at present the Irish Rugby Football Union is not in that category, but a failure, obviously, of rugby to return by September would place the game on this island under threat. He writes, and England and France, as a consequence to all this, suddenly allowing World Rugby to talk to their players about more things than just player welfare. They're now obliging, I suppose, if you could word it that way, by allowing World Rugby to look at how they might be able to help clubs survive financially beyond this pandemic. Emmett Malone takes up the story of James McLean's Instagram post. He was homeschooling his kids while wearing a balaclava, and it's caused a bit of a stir, as you might imagine. And intriguing story as well from Johnny Watterson down the bottom. I mentioned it a bit earlier on. Bernard Dunn's request to have the entirety of Team Ireland boxers and backroom staff tested after that. Obviously, they were at the London European Olympic qualifiers in the last couple of weeks. Some of the teams, not the Irish team, but some of the other teams who were at it had since tested positive for it. And Bernard Dunn asking that some of his, all of his team get tested.
The Irish Daily Star this morning, Adrian leads with Up for the Cup, September showpiece final possible, writes Jeremy Cross. So football bosses in England insist the FA Cup will be completed this season, even if the final has to be played in September. We've also got COVID-19 blow for Dub star. So this is Siobhan Killeen, who is obviously Dublin footballer, but also a radiographer at Dublin's Mater Hospital, has tested positive for COVID-19. She's urged people to abide by expert advice in the fight against the virus. She first experienced symptoms last Sunday evening, was tested on Monday and received her results on Tuesday. She is self-isolating, but reports that she's doing well and is anxious to return to work when cleared. You've also got Whelan aiming for the Euros, writes Paul Lennon. Glenn Whelan will postpone his intended international retirement if Ireland reach next year's Euros, as a 36-year-old midfielder had penciled in his boys in green farewell for this summer at the tournament if they had qualified, but obviously that's going to have to be pushed back if he wants to play next year. And GAA facing major call. GAA Chiefs will have to go with old-school knockout championships if the coronavirus stoppage extends into the summer.
Yeah, there's a couple of interesting stories in that we might get to in a little bit. But the Mirror before that, and the idea that Premier League games, the 3 o'clock starts on the Saturday, which haven't been live in the UK for quite some time. We've had the pleasure of it here on various channels, but not in the UK, with the idea, obviously, that they get people to grounds. They're now saying that they would press ahead with the idea of putting games at 3 o'clock on a Saturday with the explicit purpose of keeping people away from the games. Obviously, post-coronavirus, writes John Cross there in the Mirror this morning. And I did wonder why they would leave it to chance, why they wouldn't just say, let's put a limited capacity at the various grounds, which was something I just assumed would happen out the other side, where you have a 40,000 ground, we're going to limit it to 5,000 or 10,000 initially, rather than we put the game on TV in the hope that people will come. I don't quite fully understand that. Maybe they will do things like that in tandem. And also the other line just in the Mirror was that the Leeds manager, Marcelo Bielsa, has taken a 40 grand a week wage deferral, according to that piece in the Mirror this morning. So there's a lot of chat about wage deferrals this morning across a lot of the papers, particularly in relation to the players. And that's effectively the idea that they would say, we'll see again, we're not taking a pay cut, and it seems like Premier League players have been very insistent on that, but you can pay us again when the revenue starts to come back in. That's the Mirror this morning. The
UK Times this morning post the photograph of James McLean on their back page. McLean makes IRA joke is their headline with the photograph there, as you've already mentioned, Adrian, from his Instagram account yesterday. Risks the wrath of fans after the Ireland midfielder posted an image of himself wearing a balaclava while leading a history lesson. So that's their main picture on their back page. Their main story is that players must finish the season at their clubs, as you already mentioned. It's Matt Lawson reporting that players looking to move when their contracts expire at the end of June will be made to stay at their clubs until this season is finished, as part of a FIFA plan drawn up in response to the coronavirus, and plan to hold tour behind closed doors. This is something we were chatting about on yesterday's show. Organisers of the Tour de France are considering holding the entire 3-week race behind closed doors, as they aim to prevent the event becoming the latest to fall foul of the coronavirus pandemic. Obviously, a heap of logistical difficulties, and even the term behind closed doors is slightly comical in relation to the Tour de France.
Yeah, it might not necessarily mean actually indoors.
Well, obviously not, but that is where your head goes straight away. But no, it'll be just fans told to stay away. As we were saying yesterday, it's only really the start and finish line that are big crowd spots, isn't it? That's midway through the races and stuff like that. People are just out the front of their house watching the race go by.
Yeah, the Guardian for you this morning. English cricket is very seriously considering the possibility of running major tests in the summer behind closed doors as well. Isolation units and coronavirus testing units could be among the measures that they would put in place there to try and get these games run off. I was initially sort of a little bit surprised that they were that seriously considering it. They're the kind of measures that you would expect to happen at some point when this is actually blown over, that they would say at that point, right, we mentioned the trickle last week that they can start to tap on ever so slightly, and best practice will be to have these units where we can test people that are coming into the grounds, or that we can isolate people that are actually in there. But I would consider a little bit gung-ho, I would think, to be having that conversation just at the minute. Premier League players to accept wage deferrals rather than pay cuts is that other story we've mentioned. A big meeting today, and we shall see what the outcome of that will be. That's the Guardian for you.
The London Independent this morning leads with a photo there with the caption "Game over" as the FA calls off all non-league football. Emergency meeting to decide Wimbledon fate. Meanwhile, the All England Lawn Tennis Club will decide whether to go ahead with this summer's Wimbledon Championships during an emergency board meeting next week. So pressure's obviously been growing on them to make a decision. One of the biggest sporting events still remaining on the calendar for June and July, and Olympics count massive cost, writes Jack Rathborne. Rescheduling the Olympic and Paralympic Games to next year will incur massive costs, admitted Tokyo 2020 organisers. It'll be a big bill for them, but it'll be a big bill as well for all the NGBs and all the sports bodies putting forward athletes as well.
There's been a proper ripple of reaction to the news yesterday from Fergal McGill from the GAA about the postponement of some of the early games in the championship. One of them was taken up in the Irish News this morning by Cara O'Kane, and Ulster have come out very strongly against the idea of going down the route of straight knockout championship and doing away with the provincial championships as well. As Ulster Secretary Brian McAvoy saying that it's not on the table. 32 county knockout with no provincials was the proposal. He said that wouldn't be in any of the scenarios we're discussing at the minute. I don't think it's going to be an option. You can run the championship off as quick running the provincial championship as opposed to 32 county straight knockout. It takes the same amount of time. It's not on the table. I don't understand where they're coming from, where the cry is coming from. Why? They're going to run it off any quicker. You're not going to run it off any quicker. So why is it even a topic for discussion? I don't know what you think about this, but I don't understand why everything isn't a topic for discussion, to be honest with you. Like his logic around the duration of how long it takes is an interesting one that I hadn't given much consideration before today, and maybe there's an element of truth to it. But to be so dismissive and not sort of, well, look, it's interesting, I'm not sure it'll work out, we'll take it away and discuss it. It's very firmly Ulster says no.
Yeah, it really is. Everything is on the table right now. Like there's obviously vested interests when you hear from provincial councils at the moment, because the one thing to fall by the wayside if you have a 32 county knockout championship is that the provincial competitions just won't happen, and that will directly impact the pockets of the Ulster Council. So you can see why people in certain corners will come out and say the things that they say, but everything should be on the table, including how can we play the provincial championships. But if we get to a situation where it's late summer before any inter-county GAA can resume, then the provincial councils the provincial championships are naturally going to be the first thing to fall by the wayside. I would say after the National League, but from the sounds Fergal McGill was making yesterday, the National League is dust. This thing is not going to happen. Like Meath people and Mayo people will be counting their blessings this morning. Cork people will be cursing life because nothing will be happening for them in terms of getting promotion. But it seems that won't go ahead. Next step now is just when you start hearing proper sounds that the provincial championships are going to be scrapped. But like when he talks about the fact that it's not actually going to be quicker to play off a 32 county championship than whatever the original one with a backdoor and all that, it's not necessarily true, because with different sized provinces you're necessarily waiting for other provinces to get finished, and if everything was a bit more equal, you could actually have week after week after week of games instead of counties sitting on their hands for a few weeks. So if you want to get this thing done quickly and get it done in the space of 2 months or whatever it might be, then definitely the all knockout competition is the quickest way to do it.
Yeah, and just everything is up for discussion, man. That's the I would have thought. I don't understand why it wouldn't be. Anyway, you've got the Telegraph.
The Telegraph leads with battle to survive. Sam Wallace on how Stevenage are fighting for their future. We're unfortunately going to see a few of these stories over the next little while of teams in the UK who are going to struggle to keep their head above water. Lambert says, sacrificing my pay is the least I can do. This is Ipswich Town's Paul Lambert. He's emerged as the first professional manager to defer his wages as his club grapples with the financial crisis caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Bruce calls for a festival of football to finish the season. Meanwhile, Newcastle manager Steve Bruce there saying we should just get it all done quickly at the end. And crisis talks over EFL wage deferrals. Emergency measure could spread to Premier League. Leeds players agreed to halt pay to protect club staff.
Yeah, very briefly, Mike Keegan writes about the same thing in the Daily Mail this morning about those pay deferrals. Massive meeting today. We'll get the thoughts of Keith Andrews on that a bit later on. Philip Lanigan on the GAA target now of mid-June is the latest date that they're obviously putting on the table from Fergal McGill yesterday. Again, we shall wait and see.
Let us have a look at the Sun this morning. And the Sun leads with a picture there of Mo Salah. Pyramid season break. Klopp 4 months without Salah. Jurgen Klopp faces a selection disaster next season with Mo Salah potentially away for up to 4 months. Egypt bosses still want the Liverpool star to play at the rescheduled Tokyo Olympics. So, of course, that is the other situation here, is that if anybody wants to play in the Olympics, they're going to miss a good section of next season. I think we can almost say for certain that there will be an overlap on that front. Like, Tokyo bosses are really making noise at the moment that it is going to be a springtime league or a springtime event. It is certain that the Premier League will be a springtime event. It could even run into next summer, given how things have gone all the way back. You've also got Rossi's tie is a runner. John Prenti insists that Roscommon's championship visit to London has not been scrapped. And non-league legal fight. This is the story again about FA Chiefs could face legal action after clubs below the English National League have had their seasons declared null and void.
All right, just gone 8 o'clock. Another piece to mention that's up on offtheball.com, by the way, just gone up this morning. A slightly different piece, it has to be said, and you can expect plenty of that over the next weeks and months, but one that everybody might be interested in. Arthur O'Dea, the resident-in-chief off the ball, Bob Dylan Nutt, has put this one out there a little bit earlier. A previously unheard 17-minute Bob Dylan track, maybe not that all that unusual, and really worth checking out. Bob Dylan releases epic new song charting JFK's final moments in an effort from Bob. He is that much of a legend to keep us all a bit distracted from the madness that's going on. He's decided to release a 17-minute track. And I know exactly what I'm going to be doing at 9:30 and 30 seconds this morning. I'm going to be going to have a little bit of a look at that. And I'll be interested to get Arthur's thoughts as well. He is literally a student of Bob Dylan.